Tennessee's forests provide a variety of benefits that are enjoyed to some extent by all citizens. The state's forest landscapes provide a range of ecosystem services to society. These include air and water quality, wildlife, wood products, recreation, and scenery. While there is a growing demand for ecosystem services, including scenic quality, working forests are under increasing development pressure. The U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service has estimated that more than 44 million acres of private forests, or 11% of the total forest area in the U.S., are at risk of conversion to development within the next 2 decades. Scenic views are increasingly at risk due to ongoing patterns of commercial and residential development in rural landscapes. Until recently, ecosystem services, especially forest views, have been considered free goods, and their contribution has been heavily undervalued. Understanding how people value the view of forests in their surrounding landscapes is important both in conserving and managing the landscapes and designing effective land use plans.
Our region, the 10 counties around Nashville, is described as one of the most beautiful parts of Tennessee. And it's beautiful because we have a broad array of open lands with different types of characteristics: hardwood forests, cedar glades, open farmland, rolling meadows. We have these beautiful open spaces. We also have very unique communities, old historic communities, fastly growing modern communities, historic old towns. Well, these places in our region really give us the great quality of life that we value. And it also is the reason a lot of people want to move here. We're an attractive area, it's fabulous. So our opportunity and our challenge when we look at preserving our open land and forest is to figure out a way to accommodate all this growth and development, but also keep these open lands and forest resources that make us so unique and special.
Jennifer Carlett and Anita McKeag work with the Nashville-Davidson County Planning Commission and have worked with this issue firsthand.
One of the challenges we face throughout Davidson County is helping people understand and think through logically, reasonably, but also with some hopefulness what is possible on their land and what some good outcomes would be for future development or preservation in some cases. And that was definitely the case in Scottsboro-Bells Bend, where we had a lot of conflicting ideas about what was possible in this area. There were numerous stakeholders who wanted to see a significant return of agriculture in the area, and specifically agriculture that was sustainable, that was organic. Then there were retorts from other folks saying, well, we haven't seen large-scale farming in this area for some time. Is that economically viable? There were folks that said, I want to be able to have some development rights on my land, and others saying, no, the preservation of your land benefits me in terms of how I enjoy my land. And that comes back to the discussion of the view sheds and what is the monetary value of those.
So our work focused on that balance of preservation and development. During the course of it, we had one large property owner, the May family, 1,500 acres in the southern part of Bells Bend, that wanted to do something with their property, and they wanted to do something creative with it. So they proposed a mixed-use town center with some corporate campuses that would take up a third of it and then preserve the other 2/3 of it. So we worked with balancing that to see, you know, at first glance that might sound a bit preposterous, but then it was like, well, you know, are there tools available then to really balance and let some area develop densely, but then preserve everything around it permanently? And so through that balancing act, that's when we worked with ideas such as the transfer of development rights, conservation easements, to see then how we could preserve not only the land surrounding the edges of the May property where they wanted to so intensely develop, but then also the corridor along Old Hickory Boulevard to really preserve it as a rural corridor and not let any kind of commercial development in there that would make it seem more suburban than a rural corridor.
So when we do community planning with one of the 14 communities in Davidson County, we always face some basic challenges, regardless of what community you're in. You face challenges in trying to get people engaged. It's like voting. You can offer people the opportunity, but people may not show up, or if they do, they may feel bashful and not want to speak up in a group. So there's always working on inclusivity. That was made more difficult or more challenging in Bells Bend and Scottsboro because we're always very clear with the community that when we say we want stakeholder involvement, we want residents, property owners, business owners, institutional representatives, elected officials, and developers. And the reason we try to get everybody to the table at one point is that we'd rather have an honest, open conversation about what people want to do with their land, whether it's preserving it or developing it, and have that conversation up front when we're in a community planning, visioning, setting goals kind of a place, instead of just waiting for the zone change when there's more money on the line and more people wanting to have a say in it. So we try to involve all these people, and that's not always the easiest to get everybody to come to the table and then be able to have a good conversation with one another, especially because there's a lot at stake in Scottsboro, Bells Bend, and opinions run deep both ways in terms of folks that want preservation and folks that want to be able to retain some of their property rights and see some development on their property. So that was a challenge that we faced in Scottsboro, Bells Bend. I think we also faced some challenge in terms of helping people think about what the possibilities could be. That you could have preservation of some areas and development of some others, and what kind of tools you could use for those. We spent a lot of time educating about tools such as transfer of development rights and what that would mean, and conservation easements as a tool for permanently preserving land. And then I think the biggest challenge was, of course, trying to reach some kind of common vision. And I don't know that I can say that we definitely didn't reach a consensus on that. And that kind of decision is still out there and before the Planning Commission as to what amount of Scottsboro Bells Bend is going to be conserved and what amount might be developed in the future. One conversation that we had with the community in Scottsboro Bells Bend was regarding levels of preservation of land. We were creating a plan that would have policy, land use policy, which is a guide for future rezonings. And so that's one level of protection. If you want to get stricter in your protection, you can use zoning. And so you may zone the property to be agricultural or agricultural and residential. And that's an additional level of protection. However, zoning can be changed by council, and so it's not permanent by any means. If you want to take it one step further, people might use the transfer of development rights or a conservation easement. And throughout our process, we encouraged the community that if they were truly committed to preserving this land, they needed to make private property owner decisions to pursue conservation easements. And one of the interesting things about that conversation is we were approaching it in terms of saying, come on, it's time to step up. This is a choice that you can make. But it became apparent to us through the process that the conservation easements really weren't as easy as they appear to be on paper. There's quite a bit of cost involved, and for some properties and property owners, the tax benefits aren't as great as you might initially think. Luckily, we've got terrific organizations like the Land Trust for Tennessee that work very diligently with individual property owners to craft a conservation easement that is valuable to them and preserves the land that they value. But it's not as easy as just saying you ought to go and get a conservation easement, which probably leads you to a broader conversation, a policy conversation about what your community may want to do to encourage conservation easements. Can they provide the surveyors or the lawyers or the people who do assessments to figure out what the land is worth? Can they assist in other ways to cover some of those initial costs so that people that might not be able to afford to do a conservation easement or may not see it as financially beneficial, they may make that choice? And that's a policy conversation that we can have about, is it valuable to us to preserve these permanently, and what are we as a community willing to do to make that happen?
Middle Tennessee is not the only region seeing this issue develop. Population pressures and rural demographic change are also significantly affecting eastern portions of the state, where wildland fire also plays a significant role in community planning. Tom Simpson is a regional urban forester with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, Division of Forestry, and is working closely with the local planning commissions on scenic view conservation in the wildland-urban interface.
We are standing in what would be termed wildland-urban interface. It seems to be the new conflict ground between planners, resource professionals. Wildland interface is simply the area, the rural areas that are being developed for cabins, for homes, home sites, and these sites normally have city services such as sewer, water, fire, water supplies, etc. So they build these subdivisions up on these ridges, again without any fire planning, and then later on you may have serious issues then trying to even travel into these areas that are on fire, trying to save homes. Most communities already are recognizing that a hillside or ridgetop being forested is much more valuable than a hillside or ridgetop that has houses all over it. So what they're looking at is effective management systems that will not eliminate, but at least minimize the environmental damage done by developments on hillsides and ridgetop. They're looking at it from saving water quality, improving water quality, saving stormwater runoff so that we don't have issues downstream, increasing air pollution value for the public as a whole. And so all of these play into effect on that piece of ground that's on a ridge that man thinks is important. He would like to perhaps utilize it in some agricultural practice or even timber it perhaps, and the county is saying that value is much higher than what you think it is, and so we're willing to reimburse you for that.
To examine whether a landowner could benefit by providing ecosystem services, such as scenic views, and still achieve timber objectives, we met with a landowner in Cheatham County who was interested in conducting a timber harvest, while at the same time conserving the viewshed of his property for his family and the surrounding community.
We bought this place about 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, with the idea of logging it, and my wife has gotten into, she does organic gardening and has been getting into agritourism and things like that. But what we're wanting to do with the place is we liked it because the house has been here since the 1820s, 1830s. We like the seclusion, and we like the fact that we like the privacy, but we also like the fact that it had a lot of woods, and we like looking at them. And that's one of the reasons why we like being way back in the woods up here, is because we had a nice view of the timber in front of us and behind us. It sort of held us in here. But one of the things that we're wanting to do is have it logged at different times, but we want to do as low an impact of a logging as we can, not have it just all cut up and tore up and ruin a lot of this or a lot of that. I've been around loggers. I think I've talked to just about everybody. I see them out when I'm out working, and I'll start asking for a card or whatever. And I found out that it's hard to get people to come out and just do a low impact logging. And I also found that it's hard to get people to sign contracts. I put a house up here or something up here. There's a fire pit right here, and it's not too bad. But the view is not too good, from my opinion. There's a lot of places in here that are really, really nice. There's one on our property. There's only one spot where you can see the river, and you can't see something, and it's just a little bit of a sliver of it. But it's worth gold. But Ashland City's growing on that side of the river. All of those houses up on the ridge across the way, they've all been built in the past 8 to 10 years. Just down the river, about 3 miles at the bridge on 49 that crosses the Cumberland River, they're putting in a place called the Braxton. A bunch of high-rise condominiums. They put in boat slips and different things. So it's growing on that side of the river, and they get the benefit of having a nice view. We get the benefit of looking at progress.
One of the ecosystem services that landowners were most interested in providing was visual quality. There is an opportunity to encourage landowners to either alter their management plans, maybe delay harvest or conduct different types of harvest to try to maintain that visual quality if they are receiving some type of incentive to do so, whether it's a public incentive. In some cases, in other parts of the country, there's even been discussions of communities paying landowners to protect or to maintain visual quality. So that is there are some opportunities there to encourage landowners to maintain visual quality, given that there is some incentive to do so.
The presentations we just heard identified some of the key principles of market-based solutions to issues related to development pressures in the wildland-urban interface. We heard that the view of a forested landscape indeed has significant value. Landowners can benefit by providing ecosystem services and still achieve timber objectives. And community planners had tools, both regulatory and market-based, available to them to maintain scenic views so that development and tourism interests could beneficially coexist.
So the opportunity and challenge for us as a region is to figure out how to grow and develop and accommodate the growth that we want that's sure to come, but also how to preserve these unique places, our hardwood forest, our cedar glades, our canopy that make our region so beautiful and special. So when you think about it that way, the whole community has a stake in that. And each individual landowner has a stake in that by deciding to manage the land that they have or care for it or steward it in a way that they take the best care that they can for the forested areas or the open farmlands or the lands around the rivers and streams, so that each individual decision works collectively as a community to preserve these beautiful places that, again, we all value, that we want to keep, but we also know are vital to our future economic vitality. So again, you know, from a personal level, from a professional level with the work we do at CRT, and then just looking at the general economic health of communities in our region, we have to know that the decisions we make every day about how we manage our natural resources and make good land use decisions are really upon all of us to work together.